Hello everyone, my name is Nootmad and today I'll be taking you guys through yet another build that I have come up with. This build is a variation of the Stormcaller Moze build that I used previously, which I made a video on as well. But since the Maliwan Takedown release and the release of Mayhem 4, it has been incredibly evident that you really do require as much damage as possible if you want to clear the raid in a group or as solo as I have done with this build. So this build is very similar to the previous Stormcaller build that I made before, with some slight skill tree changes and also gear changes as well. But the overall concept remains the same: to use the brainstorm and the Gatling gun to deal damage to targets and to deal mobbing damage, and you'll be using a different set of weapons to deal damage to the bosses themselves. So let's get right into the gear setup. So the Gatling gun will be our primary source of single target damage, with the annulment while terrified deal 50% bonus cryo damage. This Gatling gun is a very strong gun with a high fire rate and base damage, which helps a lot to make sure you're doing as much damage as possible. And the annulment as well will inevitably boost your damage because we are also using an Icebreaker Deathless. Whenever you freeze enemies, you'll be doing a lot more damage to them, and with this build in particular you'll be dealing with a lot of cryo damage, so making sure you're boosting that damage as well helps a lot to, well, succeed in the raid. Following on from that, we'll be using the redundant Facepuncher, with the annulment melee attacks have a 25% chance to apply terror to yourself. This is because this build revolves around the terror mechanic and you need a way to proc terror, so I chose the Facepuncher for that. The brainstorm will be our other gun we use to deal mobbing damage, because when you shoot an enemy it'll Tesla towards any other enemies and it will chain everywhere else, dealing mass damage to a large area. This gun will also have the annulment while terrified to deal 50% bonus cryo damage. This is because because you'll be doing a lot of chain damage, having that cryo damage as well will freeze those enemies, which will in turn boost the damage through the Icebreaker Deathless. Following on from that, we'll be using the Stimulating Devil's Foursome. This pistol or any other shock splash damage weapon will do just fine. I just prefer to use a pistol in this scenario because they're a lot easier to swap to, and because they're fast to shoot and it fills up your shield pretty fast. A couple shots with this will fill up your shields completely. As for the shield, we'll be using a Transformer obviously, because we'll be using a shock splash damage to heal it, with the annulment while terrified game and regen. You can swap this annulment out for anything else really. There are new annulments now to deal extra elemental damage, so if you have a shield that can deal cryo or corrosive damage as well, that helps a lot considering the bosses have a lot of armor. But I prefer the while terrified game and regen because it synchronizes well with the whole terror setup of this build. The grenade mod we'll be using can be anything really, but what you want is the annulment while terrified, gain increased damage and fire rate, and the more terror you have, the higher the bonus. So because we'll be self-proccing a lot of terror, this annulment will always be active and will always be getting an increased damage and fire rate. This works incredibly well with the Brainstormer and even better with the Gatling gun, just to deal as much damage as possible. The class mod we're using is a Bloodlover because this is a 1 HP build. Mostly because the 1 HP builds do tend to have the most damage output for most Moze builds. We have +3 Desperate Measures and +2 Phalanx Doctrine. Phalanx Doctrine is arguably Moze's best mobbing skill, and because we'll be doing a lot of mobbing in the raid, this skill boost is invaluable. Desperate Measures is also very useful because we're on 1 HP, boosting that skill a lot will ensure that we're always having damage. With 6 out of 3 Desperate Measures, we're ensuring that we have 100% gun damage at all times just for existing, which is really good. Obviously you want to have extra rolls that will boost your damage, but if you don't, that's fine. This build does a lot of damage. Having these extra rolls just helps you do even more. Following on from that, we'll be using an Icebreaker Deathless, as I explained before, because we'll be doing a lot of cryo damage and freezing from our Brainstorm and a Gatling gun. The Icebreaker Deathless will boost the damage as well, and once again, having better rolls than that will help you in the raid itself. So this is stage 1 of the raid build. This is because the current setup we have is more geared towards mobbing and small boss damage. Waytan himself is a very difficult boss and he's very tanky, so you want to make sure you have weapons that can deal as much damage as possible. Because the Waytan fight itself is quite difficult, and because he spawns a lot of adds and does a lot of area-wide attacks, we want to increase our mobility as well. So because of that, we'll be making some gear changes. We will be changing the Icebreaker Deathless to a Snowdrift Deathless. because we want to be moving around as much as possible. In the Wotan fight itself, standing still is basically a death sentence. If you're doing this solo, it's got to be very punishing, because once you die in the Wotan fight, you end up spawning just after the Valkyrie fight, and it'll take you another 5 to 10 minutes to fight your way all the way back to Wotan to do it all over again. So you want to make sure you're able to move around as fast as possible, self-healing, and just getting out of the mortar attacks that Wotan does. We'll be changing out, so we changed out the relic, we'll also be changing out the transformer shield. The anointment that we want is the action skill and apply terror to yourself for every 5 seconds. This is because we still want to make use of this grenade anoint to make sure we're doing as much damage as possible, and also because we'll be swapping out the redundant Facepuncher for a Torg rocket launcher or a Cutsman. So I prefer to use a vigorous quickie with the anointment. Exiting Iron Bear, you get increased splash damage. You can also use a corrosive one. Mind the weapon icon, I don't know why that's happened, but so it's up to you whether you use a corrosive one or a non-elemental one. I found that it doesn't make too much of a difference, but the non-elemental one does have a lot more damage, so we'll be swapping out that. The weapons will be staying the same, but Snowdrift Deathless became a Shredify now, that's good. But so yeah, Snowdrift Deathless becomes part of the kit, so does this new shield, and so does the rocket launcher. So onto the skill setup, it'll be a green-red hybrid. The previous Stormcaller build used the blue tree, but I found that the damage was still good, but it didn't really work well in the Wotan fight itself. It worked well for the mobbing part, not so much for the Wotan fight. So I made a skill tree adjustment. So, we went into the green tree to pick up the Forge Capstone. This is because you're doing a lot of shooting and you want to make sure your mag size is as high as possible, so you always have enough ammo to keep fighting. Because we'll be doing a bunch of crits, which is the skill in the red tree, we're making sure we're boosting our fire damage. Being able to shoot while sprinting is a very useful utility skill, especially in the Wotan fight. Redistribution helps with ammo regen. Scrappy will help immensely because we're swapping to the Devil's Force and to self-heal. So having that extra swap speed helps a lot in situations where things get difficult. Specialist Bear doesn't really matter, but we just needed it to move down the tree. Some for the road is also very important because that will be our primary skill to deal damage to Wotan himself and also bosses like Kraken. The thing about the Valkyrie fight is that they spawn a lot of adds with them, so you don't really need to use single weapons. The Brainstormer does perfectly fine with them, because the thing about the Brainstormer is that the more enemies it chains to, the more damage it does. So that's it for the green tree. We move down to the red tree. A bit of a different setup than usual. Typically you would see builds use Thin Red Line and Flat Off Ingenuity. So in the fight itself it does help to have more shields, but we'll be doing a lot of weapon swapping to self-heal, so these really aren't that useful. What I instead elected to do was to pick up Security Badge just to give yourself a little more tankiness when you're in Iron Bear, because you'll be using that to heal up as well, and also to proc some for the road and your anointments. We also picked up Full Cannon Whoop-Ass because when you jump into Iron Bear, Moze will immediately start charging a shield, and we picked up a couple points behind the Iron Curtain to boost that shield recharge delay and rate while inside Iron Bear. So if we sit in Iron Bear for about 4 to 5 seconds, your entire shield capacity will be regenerated. We also picked up Desperate Measures. We'll max it out and try to get as many points as the phalanx as possible with this, because we're doing an extra 8 damage per stack and we're getting 12% extra shields. During the fight, during the mobbing area of the fight, up until Wotan, you'll always be killing a lot of mobs. I've noticed myself that I can always maintain about 7 to 8 stacks of phalanx at any given time, so that's just almost 60% extra gun damage and close to 100% extra shields, which is really useful for survivability. So yeah, that's about it for the build, and let's just jump right into some gameplay.
Scar's been like popping in like every week or so. I didn't count him as fully gone.
Build chat. Build popping up.
Build chat's pretty quiet right now.
It's just that time of day where you get like the occasional "Hey, build?" pins.
Yeah. It's like it's weird because build chat has been a cycle of the VHs. Day one, it was all Moses. It was just all Moses talking about Iron Bear.
And then
Day 2
Black,
was Moze
right?
again. Flags weren't really until like late day 3, day 4.
Okay.
When people started discovering rack.
Yeah, like me and Rotor had made rack by then, and we're basically solidified it, and then everyone discovering it.
Yeah.
And like yesterday was kind of zane for a while.
Yeah, because people were asking about it.
Aww. It was
I think I'm
so
going to go
close
back
to
Battle
good.
Tech now. Oh, now I remember why I stopped playing Battletech today.
Excuse me? Buddy, yeah.
I tabbed back into my window and realized I just lost 4 mechs.
Sound good.
So the other day, I was doing a long mission. I almost completed it. And there's this one dude left. I've taken off both of his arms, and he's got a little tiny missile system in his chest. And he misses his shot with his missiles. And he headshots 2 of my guys with the missed shot. Takes out 2 of my pilots for 70 days, and knocks out a mech entirely.
God, that sounds like an XCOM thing.
Yeah,
God,
this is
XCOM is
XCOM, but big
brutal.
stompy robots.
This makes me want to go play Civ.
I did my fucking time on enemy within what was it, commander difficulty? I forgot what it's called.
Oh Jesus, you
But
did it on
Straight
that.
Fire can go fuck
Oh,
itself.
my thing stopped looping.
I've done my time.
Zane didn't even have a full day, he had like half a day, then driver.
This Valkyrie has
Yeah,
gone
yeah,
immune,
yeah,
and she's
okay,
just
where
chasing
I got
me.
praised once, and then like everyone stopped because everyone was kind of realizing, oh yeah, hey, saying nothing changed. It's just Donnie's a better skill now. That's literally the only highlight of the buff for me for Zane. It's just like Donnie is like comparable to Zane.
I mean, most of the kill skills stacking twice is a cool idea.
It is.
It is.
Like, I was extremely excited when I saw that, but then I realized, oh, the only damage kills Donnie still. Shit.
Oh, I mean, violent speed stacking twice is decent.
Violent speed stacking twice is alright. It's
I mean, it's not amazing, but it's something.
I don't want to even call it something, because BM only being 0.3 is still a fucking slap in the face.
It's something.
Something. I still like wish that Dream and why am I forgetting this guy's name? Shit. It's 2 of the people I used to work with Zane. Zarok. That's it. I want to see them come back. I'd say build chat is back to like pretty much normal now though. A lot of the hype has died down. A lot of the builds have been adjusted, and
people have remembered TDR's OP and can solo the raid because TDR.
I'm surprised how many more people in chat are like actually agreeing with us on the TDR point.
Really?
Yeah, there's been quite a few people agreeing, like, yeah, TDR ain't a build.
It's a gimmick.
And Choco hates it,
Can you like
which
get
makes
those
me love it
people-
more.
Can you like get those people in Discord, please?
None of them are Zane mains.
Well,
Oh wait,
okay.
no. One is Cosmic God Gamer.
Oh yeah, Cosmic. Oh yeah, he hangs around ladies.
Yeah, no, he had a full